Junpei Berry again. And we're going to read, of course, MatsuriBayashi. Not going to be super invested in the reading. If you can't tell, right now we're kind of on the down low because it's kind of like, we're just reading, assembling fragments together. So it's just really revealing all of the answers that we need before we officially see the story. That's what it rises up against. You're just gonna have to be patient. It's important, but I can understand if it's kind of like whatever. Oops, sorry if you heard that. I have my drink. So yeah. So we're gonna see Rika.
I ran to Sadako while on my way to the grocery store for my mother. Sadako said she was going there too, so we decided to go together. After exchanging our shopping list, it became easy to guess what the other family would be having for dinner. Sadako's family's having grilled fish and cooked vegetables. We're having Salisbury steak.
My, that sounds so very good! I don't mind the grilled fish, but it's the vegetables I'm less fond of. I'm certain there's still plenty of pumpkin left from the other day.
Then I'll bet you'll be getting a lot tonight. Poor Sadako.
I don't appreciate knowing that pumpkin's going to show up on the dinner table.
I pray to God that nobody heard the goddamn sirens. Can we start over? Hold on, I do not appreciate having sirens interrupt. I get very pissed off, so let's try again.
I ran to Sadako while on my way to the grocery store for my mother. Sadako said she was going there too, so we decided to go together. After exchanging our shopping list, it became easy to guess what the other family would be having for dinner. Sadako's family's having grilled fish and cooked vegetables. We're having Salisbury steak.
My, that sounds so very good! I don't mind the grilled fish, but it's the vegetables I'm less fond of. I'm certain there's still plenty of pumpkin left from the other day.
Then I'll bet you'll be getting a lot tonight. Poor Sadako.
I don't appreciate knowing that pumpkin's going to show up on the dinner table.
Me. You don't like pumpkin no matter how it shows up.
Rika, you have some food you're not fond of, don't you? That's right, you don't like daifuku, cream puffs, or anything sweet, don't you?
It's not that I don't like those things. I just choose not to eat them. If I wanted to, I could eat sweets forever. I could even eat pumpkin pie too. Mipa.
Oh, it's not fair that you aren't a picky eater!
Conversations like this are how I have fun. Sadako is my best friend. I usually don't like grocery shopping, but if I'm with Sadako, I can make anything into an enjoyable evening stroll. Near the supermarket, there are grocers and other shops forming a little shopping district. The grocery store is busy at this time of day. All the housewives and Hinamizawa gathered here to shop. Since Sadako and I have different things we buy, we decided to do our shopping separately.
Welcome, welcome. Oh, Rika, are you here shopping for your mother? What a good girl.
Nipa, I'm a good girl who can go shopping by herself.
Wow, you really are a good girl. Here, I'll give you this.
There were several candies for the owner's occasional asthma attack inside a sieve full of change hanging in the front. He picked out a sweet from there and gave it to me. It was my favorite flavor, strawberry milk. I put it in my pocket so I can brag about it to Sadako later. I get a lot of fun out of teasing Sadako and making her jealous. She always overreacts, so I never get bored when I'm with her.
What are you having for dinner tonight, Rika? Ground pork.
We're making Salisbury steak. We're going to put flour-shaped fried eggs on top and draw pictures on them with ketchup.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
I enjoyed that conversation while filling my shopping basket. But then I overheard some woman whispering. They're talking about something that's a little harsh. They're talking about Sadako.
How long do those village traders plan to stay here? They should just leave. They don't even have the guts to go shopping themselves and make their daughter do it instead.
The woman went on and on. since the Hojo family and the Sonozaki family got into a huge fight at the explanatory meeting for the dam project. The Hojo family has been ostracized within the village. At first, there were a significant amount of families in favor of leaving like the Hojos. But the main branch of the Sonozakis led a push to completely solidify the village's opinion, and as that tone of the unified resistance grew stronger, pro-evacuation families grew steadily quiet. The public harassment led by the Sonozakis and Kimiyoshis, two of the three families with powerful influence on the village, also played an effect too. The Sonozaki family made the Hojo family into an example to ensure there would be no more pro-evacuation supporters. The ancestors of the village have lived here for generations, and the villagers also know that they themselves will be buried in this village, so this harassment will put a lot of pressure on them. Who was it that agreed to make the Hojo family the leader of the pro-evacuation group of the explanatory meeting? Those same people no longer said anything. They even joined in on and harassing the Hojo family. The harassment they faced then became pressure from the entire village. The Hojo family is hardly wealthy, and they haven't paid the town council fees in a long time. When things were peaceful, nobody said anything about it. But now the wind was blowing a different way. The Hojo family was asked to pay all of their late council fees immediately. It wasn't an amount they couldn't afford, but the Hojos recognized the fight was being picked on them and they responded to it. And so the Hojo family quit the town council. But they only played right into the village's evil plan. Making an enemy of the town council meant facing vicious harassment. For example, the place the Hojos dumped their trash was a provisional dumping site established by the town council and the waste management department. Under the council agreement, only council members could use it. Ever since the day the Hojo family quit the village council, their trash bags were returned to their front door. Furthermore, all the bags were torn. On top of that, a sign went up on the hedgerow near the Hojo family. It said, "Private road, no trespassing. Only council members permitted." A stubborn old man stood and guarded the road, saying that he would not let any of the Hojo family members pass through. A private road is a private property opened up to the public, so it looks just like a normal road. However, as private property, the owner can forbid anyone else to pass through however they like. More and more, the village piled on vicious harassment. The fear of antagonism spread throughout the entire village, and people became afraid that if they supported the Hojo family, they'd go through the same thing. This has made the Hojo family even more isolated. The grown-ups haven't told their kids about what's going on, so Sadako isn't harassed in any way at school. But it wasn't hard to imagine she'd probably spent her days feeling so anxious she could hardly breathe. Even when the women whispering here aren't saying anything directly to Sadako, it's not like she doesn't notice their muttering and the cold stares. When did this village become so cold towards her? As her best friend, it's very sad for me. Sadako's shopping experience is nothing like mine. When I say hello or buy things, I usually get treats or a discount, but that doesn't happen to Sadako. On the contrary, she's served last on purpose. Sometimes shop owners even pretend they don't hear her. Obviously, people don't want to have anything to do with her. Sadako has been weaving through the housewives crowding the shop and telling the fishmonger what she wanted, but she kept getting ignored. She decided to keep her smile and pretend she doesn't mind, but I know. It was far too painful for her to endure. At that point, Sadako dropped her coins on the ground. Maybe her fingers got stuck on something. She was trying to put the change back into her wallet. I ran through the crowd to help her pick them up. But as I did, I noticed something. Sadako dropped a lot of coins and is struggling to pick them all up, but nobody is helping her. It's not just that. It's almost like they're acting like they don't even see her there. Sadako isn't expecting anyone to help her since she's the one who dropped them. But there are so many people around and not even one is trying to aid her.
Sadako, I'll help you. I'm okay, Rika.
That reaction is all I need to tell how hurt she is. Furthermore, when I started to help Sadako, other housewives started to pick up the coins too, as if it's a natural thing to do. So they can only help if a shrine maiden of the Furude family does? If I didn't help, they would have disregarded her completely, and the fact the other people helped only because I did hurt Sadako even more. I grabbed the coins from the housewives without thanking them. I'd rather spit at them than do that.
Thank you very much, Rika. Everyone.
If she didn't thank them, people would talk about that too. Sadako forced out her words of gratitude. The housewives looked down at her with blank expressions. I can't stand this. I can't stand what Sadako is going through right now.
If we're done, let's go, Sadako.
Sure! I grabbed Sadako's arm and pulled her away. I was frustrated, sad, and bitter. What has Sadako done? Reality is just too cruel. Everyone loves me. But can I share that love with Sadako? Sadako must be wondering why people treat me so differently. I shouldn't come shopping with her, or rather, I should have done her shopping instead.
Sadako. What is it, Rika?
I feel bad that you dropped your coins, so here's something that'll make you happy. I wanted to at least ease her pain a little bit, so I pulled out the strawberry milk candy I just received, but Sadako refused to take it.
That candy was given to you.
My hand froze. She saw me getting this candy.
That person wanted you to eat it, so if I did, it'd be rude.
Sadako turned her back on me and kept walking. Without even saying goodbye, she continued on to her house with shopping bags in her hands. I only wanted to ease her pain, but I ended up rubbing salt in her wound. How can I call myself her best friend? If I could, I would have crushed the candy right there. I think, like, I read it from a younger voice because she said that they used to be able to go back in time. So I thought that she would be younger, so I used a younger voice. Sorry. So if that wasn't appropriate, I don't care. That's my personal interpretation. Okay, let's see. So let's go back. Repetitive apologies are required. A murder with a dismembered body. Let's see. Early summer, 1979 AD. Shit. Damn it. Shit. Manager, come on, say something. Manager. You idiot. He's dead already. A loud noise snapped everyone out of it. Someone dropped the shovel he was holding. The shovel was smeared with a reddish-black blood. No, not just the shovel. All 6 construction worker clothes were blood-soaked too. One of them cried out to the silent dead body of the manager, who was drenched in blood. Manager! Shut up! He's already dead! It was self-defense! Right? Self-defense! The fight had started after the manager yelled at them for drinking beer inside the office. There were no drinking and no smoking signs everywhere. The manager harshly scolded anyone who broke that rule. So it was the 6 workers' fault for disobeying. But they drank because they were stressed out by the anti-dam protesters. That's why they said things to provoke the manager. They told him to step out. The others went along. The construction workers toiled hard and long hours. That's why they instigated the fight with the manager to release their stress. They expected to just curse at each other or to end up in a wrestling match. But things escalated. Or to put it more accurately, the manager exploded all of a sudden. The manager had to deal with the residents' protests as well. He was under just as much pressure, or maybe even more. But how he had changed was not normal. The manager was calm at first, but he gradually became more aggressive. It was like he transformed into someone completely. Oh crap, I forgot to... Oh crap, hold on. No, it was like he was possessed by something evil. The men who instigated the fight sobered up when they saw his behavior. Then,
The manager picked up a shovel that was nearby and tried to smash his opponent's head with it. He managed to avoid the hit, but if he didn't, his head would have surely been split open. The manager kept pounding on him with the shovel, even as he frantically tried to avoid the hits. By this time, the workers had realized this was beyond a simple fight. They tried to hold the manager down, but the manager turned on them with a shovel too. One of the men tried to protect himself by crossing his arms above his head, but there was no way that couldn't have blocked when the shovel swung with such force. Blood spluttered out. The man groaned in pain. By the time the 6 men had realized the manager was not his usual self, this manager would try to bash in their brains without hesitation. Since their opponent was using a shovel as this weapon, they needed to have some kind of weapon too. One of them grabbed a huge hammer. The others realized they needed to find something as well. To restrain the manager in that condition, it was better to arm themselves. It wasn't supposed to be this way. It didn't take that long for the madness to infect 6 workers. It was only a matter of time before they went from restraining him to lynching him. By the time they realized what had happened, the manager was already a lump of meat. His face was swollen. Shreds of skin had been torn off. His muscles and skull were visible too. Obviously, he was quite dead. Fuck! He almost killed us, remember? If he hadn't attacked us, we would have fought him, right? The leader of the 6, the one who instigated the fight, tried to bring the rest to his side, but nobody replied, and so the leader became frustrated. He was the one who started the fight. The rest simply joined in. He was the main perpetrator. Maybe that's why he was feeling so exasperated. He sensed he was the one at fault. Don't just stand there like a limp noodle. It's too late. We killed him. There's nothing we can do about it. We're all murderers now. Buck up. You ain't thinking about turning yourself in and doing time, are you? Fuck you. I can't go back to the slammer at my age. We're hiding it. We're hiding this course and pretending nothing happened. Some of them knew he was on probation for an assault incident once before. So if he got into trouble with the law again, the punishment would be more severe than they could imagine. That was why he was trying desperately to find a way out. If he was alone with the manager's body, then he wouldn't have behaved this way. All he would have to do was hide the manager's body and pretend nothing happened. But there were 6 of them, including him. They were partners in crime and witnesses too. If even one of them turned himself in out of guilt, he'd be in big trouble. But even if we hid the body, they'll find out sooner or later. Instead, we should just plead justifiable self-defense, and they might end up pardoning us. Don't be stupid! Look what we done! Look at his face! Who would think this is a result of self-defense? His parents wouldn't even be able to identify him in this condition, you idiot! But even if we hide it, everybody's gonna find out tomorrow morning when the manager doesn't show. It's hopeless! What's hopeless is your damn brain, you shithead! He slapped the other man in the face. The leader had such an evil look in his eyes. Listen well, dipshits. We're all murderers, okay? Keep griping now, and we'll get slammed with the 5 or 6 years. Just one of you here try and blab. We'll all be locked up. Don't underestimate the pen. If you're prepared to be caught anyway, then write it like your life depends on it. You can resign yourself to it later when it's time to pay the piper. His visage turned more and more demonic. It was the same expression the manager had just a few minutes before. Was he possessed by the same thing that possessed the manager? The 5 men started to think that way. Now that they considered it, all the villagers on the anti-dam protest had the same expression on their faces too. The real name of Hinamizawa was Onyofuji Village. People said the wicked demons lived there, and sometimes they possessed people. The men couldn't help but to recall that exaggerated story often told by the demonstrators. The man swung the shovel after his expression changed to that demonic one. There was no guarantee that this man wouldn't do the same. In fact, he was still squeezing the hammer in the hand and glaring at everyone and threatening them. If someone suggested surrendering, he'd probably smash in their head with it. I know, to make sure nobody betrays the rest, I have an idea. It'll make it easier to hide the body, too. What is it? We're gonna cut up the body into 6 pieces. What? They all wanted to object to the idea. Killing him was a serious crime itself. Dismembering the body would be too much. But if anybody objected, he'd be killed on the spot. So no one said anything. We'll cut 'em up together. Remember what the manager used to say? Teamwork! We're all in this together. We'll take each body part and handle it responsibly. What do you think, huh? This way, we're all equally guilty, right? I won't let anybody give themselves up. The 5 men were all taken in by his ghastly face. They could even feel the fear of Onyofuchi demons creeping up their backs. Uh-oh, that's not good. Sorry, I'm not a guy, so I can't do that. Irie's background. Irie's reminiscence is required. I wanted to become a doctor ever since I was little. Doctors make a lot of money. People look up to doctors. I think those are the kind of reasons I had. So when I played with my friends, I always acted like a doctor. I cleaned their wounds and applied ice packs when my friends sprained their ankles, and using what I learned from household medical books, everyone, including me, believed that I'd be a doctor one day. My family was poor, so they praised me for that goal. They told me that I needed to study a lot to become a doctor, so they borrowed some pseudo-medical books from the local library for me. The rental fees weren't cheap, so I'd speed read one book in a day, and the next day, my parents would go back into the store to exchange it for a different book, saying they accidentally borrowed a book they already borrowed before. By doing so, my parents borrowed 2 books for the price of 1. Of course, now I know that those books were rather useless. They were highly motivational just the same. My neighbors called me Dr. Kyosuke, and I was always picked for the class health officer at school. Even my teachers helped with the classes, and I needed to become a doctor. Of course, in reality, becoming a doctor isn't as easy as it might seem. I had to study diligently, and the path was most definitely rough. To become a doctor, one must attend college. Since my family was poor, I was told I wasn't allowed to go to an expensive private school, so I had to be admitted to the National Public University. My grades weren't bad, but the admission rate to the national public universities is very marginal. Especially since I wanted to go to medical school, my chances were even smaller. I studied like crazy. My only driving force was my childhood dream of becoming a doctor. The dream of becoming a doctor and to be looked up to everyone kept me going. And I was admitted. I wasn't at the top of the list, but I made it in. I was finally at the starting point of making my childhood dream come true. My parents were thrilled. Neither my father nor mother went to college, so they were proud of their son getting into a public medical school, and they invited our relatives over to celebrate. Although it was a public university, tuition wasn't cheap, but they still had an extravagant celebration anyway. My father didn't express his emotions much. He always kept a straight face. He rarely raised his voice or opinion or took initiative on anything. My mother took care of everything, and he showed up last and left without saying a word. He was the typical stern and silent Japanese father of the time. That was why I was surprised to see him shedding tears of joy, and I cried along with him. He ran around to all my relatives while repeatedly slapping my back, saying how proud and lucky he was to have a son like me. He bragged about my achievements to all who could hear them. The celebration became my farewell party as I was about to leave for Tokyo. My father yelled "Banzai" repeatedly at the station as the train pulled away. I was a little embarrassed, but when I could no longer see my father, I could clearly recall the tears pouring down. The days of hellish studying and exams began after that. Some days I was tempted to just give up and submit myself to the lavish lifestyle of the city. But the letters of my family always encouraged me and gave me the strength to go on. My dream then was to open up my own clinic in my hometown so I could contribute to the region. I never even dreamed of getting involved with brains. One day, I noticed a difference in the letter from my family. The letter said the usual things about how I was at home and asked how I was doing, but the postscript was what caught my attention. Your father has become really violent lately. Sometimes he turns the house upside down and I don't know what to do. I just couldn't picture him acting viciously. I was extremely surprised. Did something happen? But in the postscript, my mother said that there was nothing that she could think of. My father and mother had been together for a long time. They'd been together since before I was born, so she noticed things that I couldn't. She couldn't even think of a reason why my father had become so violent. What happened? They got along so well. They were such a lovely couple. When I caused a problem for my mother when I was little, my father only bonked my head with his knuckle. Why was he acting this way toward my mother? Maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding between them. I was going home for the new year. Maybe I could have a talk with him then. But the situation was a lot more serious than I thought. On one cold winter day, I found my apartment door unlocked. I thought someone had broke in, but I found my mother in my apartment with her luggage. That's right. My mother could no longer take my father's fury and came to stay with me. This is back when people still believed in the proverb, a woman has no place to settle down all her life. She couldn't go back to her own family because they lived in the same region as my father, so she came all the way back to Tokyo. I heard about my father's violence from my mother's own lips. She cried, saying she had no idea why such a quiet man had changed like that. She said she wasn't ever going back to him. I didn't know what to do. I asked her if she could talk to him one more time, but the bruises on her body told me it was no use. To remember what happened afterwards is too much, so I'll be brief. After my mother left, my father thought that she was having an affair and went over to the neighbor's house with a wooden sword. He was arrested. He was released immediately, but he assumed someone in the neighborhood was hiding her, so he did the same thing repeatedly. He eventually reached the point of getting into fights with anyone that he saw. At the end, he picked a fight with some young punks and ended up being beaten to death. My relatives gave my father a decent funeral, but my mother didn't attend. It's no use beating a dead horse, so nobody said anything negative about my father. Everyone was simply puzzled as to why he changed so much. What I heard from my relatives about my father's final days was a lot stranger than what I heard from my mother. My mother only told me about his sudden rage and violence. But my relatives told me he also laughed and grew sad. Apparently, he displayed several sudden fluctuations of emotion, especially so in his last years. They also told me he started to complain about headaches after an accident he had. My father was a construction worker. He had hit his head on a construction board during an accident at work. He regained his consciousness quickly and seemed fine. But since the accident, he started to have headaches and behave abnormally. I sensed the connection between the accident and my father's changes. I talked to my professor after I went back to Tokyo. I can't say for certain, but it sounds like your father has possibly suffered from some kind of brain damage. There's a chance a blow to his head caused an organic mental disorder. The symptoms your father showed in his final years are similar to delirium and mental fluctuations we've often seen in similar patients. Human behavior is created by the brain. If the brain is damaged, it can cause erratic behavior. In other words, my father wasn't crazy. He was suffering from a disorder. If you can perform an autopsy on him, you should check his brain carefully. Maybe you'll find something like a tumor there. My father had already been cremated. There was no way of knowing. But hearing about his behavior, I knew for sure. That was the only way to explain why such a quiet and gentle man would change. I tried to explain all this to my relatives to regain my father's honor, but hardly anyone understood. If his brain was damaged, he would have been dead. But he was alive and well, so the accident didn't damage his brain. It wasn't his brain that caused him to change, it was his mind. They simply brushed it off like that. This is the perception most people have about the brain. They don't realize the mind and the brain are connected. Most of the relatives didn't believe me. But there was one person who I really wanted to anyway. That was my mother. As she got older, she grew senile. She exaggerated the abuse she had to endure. All she did was criticize my father. And every time she ended up crying, lamenting that she married him. They were a lovely couple. We were a great family. That's why I wanted to convey to her that she was misunderstanding the situation with my father. My father's behavior was caused by his brain damage. What he did to her was very sad, but he didn't want it to be that way. I told her that he wasn't at fault. But my mother didn't understand. Before she took her last breaths, I begged her to forgive my father. But But her final words were, "Please don't bury me next to that man." My father wasn't at fault. He was simply a victim of a brain disorder. You don't complain to a person who's coughing because he has a cold, because coughing is just a symptom, and he should be sympathized with. In my father's case, the symptoms weren't as obvious as a cough. They took the form of changes in personality, which are much harder to recognize. If I'd studied the brain more, I could have explained it better to my mother so that she could have understood him. They could have been a nice couple again in heaven. But I realized that I cried. And I also realized there are plenty of people like my father in the world who are suffering from a disorder, yet they are misunderstood and despised for it. And then I found out. I found out about a miraculous cure for such disorders called lobotomy. Ever since that day, I spent my days learning about the brain so I could help people who are suffering from mental illnesses. My father is gone, but if he's still alive, I could cure him myself, so he and my mother could reconcile. That's the main reason why I'm here. You know, there is parts of Yuri's character, this is part of it that I like. If he wasn't a weirdo about Sadako, he would be a lot better. Also, another thing. What was that part that he was saying? I know there was something. I just had it on the tip of my tongue. I know I wanted to say something. I know I wanted to say something. For some reason, the thought isn't coming to mind, even though I just had it. Because... damn it! I just had the thought in my head and I forgot. I wanted to say something. Hold on. Let's go through it again. Hold on. I wanted to say something. Might as well. Okay. Hold on. Hold on. I know I wanted to say something. Okay? Sorry. Sorry. I'm just using something with my straw. Alright. Oh, right. I remember what I wanted to say. People used to make fun of me for coughing. Assholes. Alright, there. Yeah, I was surrounded by people who were, like, assholes, so. Okay. The old guy. The death of the dam construction site manager is required. I don't know what to say. I wanted to say something, but I can't think of the right words. I can only sigh. Ah, Oishi, I've been waiting for you. The section manager asked me about the wanted poster. Be quiet. This is a place of rest. As Kumagai barged into the room, the old coroner quickly snapped back at him. Sorry. The section manager asked me about the wanted poster for the suspect. Can you talk to Komiyama about that? I need to speak to the coroner here. Did you tell him I'll be right over? Okay. Kumagai ran out of the autopsy room with the same haste he entered in. Lively, isn't he? The old man would have slapped him for making such a fuss. You should probably go back too. The air in here isn't for people who aren't used to it. You're right. If I slack off too long, I might get slapped as well. Here in Shishibone, all the hoodlums cross the street when you pass through, yet he's the only one past our future who's ever punched you for splitting your sumo wrong. Okay. He was really a merciless man. I think he punched me more than my real father. Doesn't matter if he was your real one or not. If you looked up to him the same way, then he really was a father to you. My real father passed away in Nagoya. He was unlucky. If he wasn't given the order to move to a plant in Nagoya, he wouldn't have died in the air raid. If he could have rode it out another half a year or so, then the war would have been over. I was sad, of course, but I was grown up enough by then. I didn't cry into the ground like my mother did. But people feel sadness in different ways. For some people, it comes all at once as an overwhelming wave, but others feel sadness gradually, for a long period of time. I think I was the latter. When he was alive, I thought only of him as annoying, but in my mind, I even cursed him with questions about why he avoided the draft. I thought my feelings toward him would always be the same. And the war ended, and I saw families and friends being reunited with joy as they came home from the front, and it finally happened. I grieved for my father's death. Japan was filled with people who were sad and full of despair. I knew I wasn't the only one whose life ended up that way, but I remember I was very, very heartbroken. After the war, the nation completely changed. As a policeman, the environment I worked in went through silent changes too. In order to forget my sorrow, the only thing I could do was devote myself to my work. At the time, I was in charge of busting people for buying rice illegally. I conducted spot checks on travelers at the major train stations, and boy did I ever find a lot of them. There was a fairly big black market in Gogora. A lot of people came from as far as Osaka to buy it. After the war, Japan faced a chronic shortage in food supply. To those ends, the nation instituted a food rationing program by signing for the Food Control Act. But the rations the government provided weren't even close to being enough to feed families, and therefore people had no choice other than buying food and supplies on the black market. The government hardly had enough food for rations, but there was somehow plenty on the black market. The dealers there sold it at outrageous prices. Some of them became quite wealthy. The Sonozaki family made their money through that black market, but that's another story. The government didn't bother arresting these dealers, for with their money they were able to buy off top members of the police department. Instead, they decided to go after people buying the goods, and even confiscated the rice they bought by selling everything they owned. Yeah, I remember that. Wasn't there a prosecutor who starved himself to death? Yeah, there was. The prosecutor who vowed not to eat illegal rice starved to death. Wasn't that in 1947? That was horrible. He, a public prosecutor, proved it himself that people couldn't survive by adhering to the law. That prosecutor had grown tired of the government charging people with whatever they could do to survive. He proclaimed that he was never going to buy black market rice again. In 1947, he starved to death when he was only in his mid-30s. The law prohibited people from buying black market rice, but that was the only way to survive. In that case, was the Food Control Act a bad law itself? The death of the prosecutor was seen as a desperate message to the government about the unjustness of the law. We rounded up people with bags of rice and lined them up at a temporary inspection point next to the station. It was like a military tribunal. We inspected their bags and confiscated everything they bought at the black market. The women all cried. They sold everything they owned to buy that rice. They pleaded if we confiscated the rice. How would they feed their starving children? Doesn't make sense, huh? Yet they forbade you from going after all these sellers. It's obviously unfair from the view of the people. Everyone was on edge. If they heard a police inspection was set up at the next station, they'd jump off the train and run. We were aware of these people, so we set up several officers near jump-off spots in order to capture them. I remember chasing after women carrying several kilos of rice on them. That was when I first met the old man. Man, I was surprised. Remember my father? He looked exactly like him. I really thought that maybe my father had miraculously survived the air raid in Nagoya. I was chasing after a man who was running away from the inspection point. There was no way for him to run with a heavy bag of rice on him. He'd either get arrested with illegal rice or escape by ditching the rice that he bought by selling all of his belongings. In other words, if a person is being chased by the police, that person can't provide his family any rice to eat. Of course, I felt guilty about that. I knew people had to buy the rice to survive, so we had a tacit agreement to let those who ditched the rice and get away. I always thought the same thing as I chased them. Please throw it away. I didn't want to catch him because I didn't want to hear him crying and pleading in distress. It was then the old man showed up. He looked exactly like my dead father. I was dumbfounded. Then all of a sudden he punched me in the head. If a father disciplines you, you as a child lower your head in apology. I was so happy to see my father alive, I couldn't hold my joy in. The old man said, "Let him go." And when I heard his voice, I realized he wasn't my father, so I thought I'd arrest him for assaulting a policeman. But a young man like me, who'd barely grown any hairs yet, was no match for an older man used to fighting. Yeah, he sure taught me a lesson. He gave me a good scolding in the middle of the street after I was all beat up. Who would even listen to him, right? But something struck me then. I kept seeing my father in him. All I could do was listen. Yeah, he was a ruffian, but he shows his guts like a real man. That's what made him such a great guy. You don't see men like him nowadays. He was a true example of a man from the good old times. Despite my age, I still needed a father. I needed someone to look up to and to show me what makes a man a man. When I think about it, I really did have two fathers. The old man was a father, a brother, and my best friend. But now here he lies with his head, body, and arms, and legs all dismembered. His right arm hasn't even been found. He taught me how to be a man and how to enjoy alcohol, how to play mahjong with that right arm. He gave me a good beating when I did something wrong. But that right arm is still missing. Do you have any suspects? Yeah, of course. I swear I'll find the old man's right arm and pay them back for what they've done to him. They're running enemies off in the shadows, inciting this collective crime they call the damn protests. The Sonozaki family. I declare war within myself. I already know who my enemy is. We know it's not them, okay? Obviously. But, yeah. This is why I don't like... I don't like it when tons of people have to... Well... You know. I really don't like it when people have to be forced to, well, you know. Because, well, I don't like it when tons of people have to die because of selfish decisions. Okay, that is the most, that's how I'll say it. I mean it very vague, but that should tell you how I feel about certain acts of violence or whatever. Alright? Alright, the Hojo siblings. The Hojo family is well known for going against the whole village during the dam conflict. Both the husband and the wife were rather aggressive, and they fought a fierce battle, especially against the Sonozaki family. Though the whole village treated them coldly, the husband and wife didn't really care and kept on fighting. In a way, they were extremely strong-willed people. I'm sure their children had to go through a lot because of them, though. Sadako and Satoshi were treated coldly by the villagers as well. In addition to that, Sadako and her stepfather didn't get along, so their stress level must have reached their limit. Because I'm the director of the local clinic, a rather respected member of society, people usually tell me lots of things. I was aware of the treatment they were receiving even before I met them. I met Satoshi first. Satoshi came to the clinic because he felt ill from too much stress. He must have thought he had a cold. When I examined him, he even told me that. But hearing his repeated sighs, and by seeing the exhausted look in his eyes, I knew right away it wasn't such a simple cold. Medication would heal his symptoms, but that'd only be a temporary measure. The only way to truly cure him would be to change his living environment. That was easier said than done. He was surrounded by tangled and complicated relationships with the village and his family. Just resting for a few days and taking some medication wouldn't do. Time was the only thing that could ease off the cold treatment from the villagers. But we're talking a very, very long time. That's why I felt like I had to be their first ally in the village so I could rescue them. I couldn't do anything about his stressful environment, but I could try to diminish his anxiety. I thought the best way was to teach him how to vent his stress. Playing sports is the best way to do that. So I asked him to join the junior baseball team that I coach. As a researcher, I devote most of my time to Hinamizawa syndrome, but I too needed to do something else to relax. I used to play baseball, so I decided to coach the local kids team. After a while, the children in Hinamizawa started to become their own baseball team, and somehow I became their coach. Doctors can't provide health just by giving medication. You need a sound mind and a sound body. I believe health can be maintained through sports as well. But our team needed more people, so I thought of asking Satoshi to join. Being a bookworm, Satoshi wasn't interested in playing sports. He wasn't sure how joining the baseball team would help his situation. I didn't need to go on and on about athletic medicine to explain why sports help people become healthy. I just wanted him to experience it himself to realize how great it feels to play sports. I think he realized it gradually. He's reluctant till the very end, but he attended all the team activities and games. As I saw Satoshi slowly regain his liveliness, I realized my plan worked. However, if Satoshi was under that much stress, then Sadako, who lived under the same family climate, must have felt the same way. Unfortunately, I didn't think of her back then. So when Sadako was carried into my clinic as a patient, I regretted knowing nothing about her, even while knowing the situation. As Satoshi recovered under my guidance, Sadako was left alone in her stressful environment. Also, around the time, there was an incident bad enough to make Sadako collapse. That was, of course, her parents' deaths. The day of the Watanagashi festival was a very uncomfortable time for the Hojo family, because although it was a village festival, it was also a day to celebrate victory over the dam construction project. It's understandable they would plan a family trip around that time so they could leave the village. Sorry, my vowels slipped. Sadako's parents fell off the cliff at the park they were visiting. It happened on such an unlucky day. Because it happened on the day of Watanagashi, people said it was the curse of Oyashiro. People labeled the Hojo family as one cursed by Oyashiro. The parents were given a cold shoulder by everyone in the village. With their parents gone, Satoshi and Sadako should have been freed from that butt. Unfortunately, the accident happened on the day of Watanagashi. That's why members of the Hojo family continued to be shunned. Sadako was the only one at the site of the accident. Satoshi didn't go to the trip because he had an event with the baseball team. Therefore, the police mainly interrogated her. The detective Oishi suspected an act of organized crime by the village. So as Sadako was the only witness on site, he drilled her with questions. She was as stressed as Satoshi, perhaps even more so of course she couldn't take it. During the interrogation, she began to wheeze and gasp for air. The anguished look I saw on Sadako's face when she was carried to the clinic was very, very tragic. It broke my heart just to imagine what she had gone through. Coach, is Sadako okay? Yes, don't worry. She's a bit confused, but only temporarily, that's all. May I see her? She finally fell asleep, so I'd rather not wake her up just yet. Let's just keep her at rest for a while. Maybe it's a good idea to have her stay here for a few days too. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. Thank you. I know Satoshi is a great big brother who truly cares about his sister. He emphasizes deeply with her. In other words, Satoshi's worries and stress were reflecting Sadako herself. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but while Satoshi was of course sad about his parents' deaths, he may at the same time been a little relieved that they were gone. His sister wouldn't have to be driven into a corner anymore. Unlike Satoshi, Sadako didn't have social skills to get along with her stepfather. So putting her mother aside, I was certain that losing her father, the greatest cause of her stress in life, would bring a great change in environment to her home. But I couldn't believe what happened next. The two were sent to live in an even worse environment with their aunt and uncle. Although at that time I was rather optimistic, thinking this new environment would be better for the siblings. Uh-oh. Sorry. Sonozaki Mion. Strawberry milk candy is required. Mion, your friend is here! I heard the housekeeper's voice. Our house and the front yard are huge, so unlike a normal house, ringing a doorbell or yelling my name repeatedly, asking to play won't work. Okay, thank you. Who is it? Fruity Rika. Oh, finally. Can you tell Granny that Rika's here? I think she's on the porch. I'll get the watermelon. Granny received many beautiful watermelons from somebody, so she wanted to share. I just called the Fruity house a short time ago, and Rika's here to pick one up. Did she come on her bicycle? I can't remember if it was a big basket. I pulled the watermelon from the well while thinking about that. The cold water in the well was refrigerated the watermelon, and the condensation makes it look delicious. The 3 members of the Fruity family will enjoy it for at least 2 nights.
Me? Am I supposed to take it home? I thought...
What? Didn't your dad tell you? The priest answered the phone, and I thought I told him to come pick it up. Maybe I wasn't clear enough, or maybe he misunderstood me completely. But she's here to eat the watermelon, not take it home. Besides, the small basket on Rika's bicycle won't hold the watermelon. It's too dangerous for her to ride while holding it in her hands. Mion, why don't you help Rika take the watermelon? There's no way she can ride her bicycle while carrying it.
Me? I can hold the watermelon.
No, that's too dangerous. If something happened to you, I wouldn't know what to say to Oyashiro. Oops, sorry. Let me try it again. No, that's too dangerous. If something happened to you, I wouldn't know what to say to Oyashiro. Mion will help you. Okay, I will. I'll go say hello to the priest, too. No matter where she rides or pushes her bicycle, Rika's hands will be occupied, so I'm gonna carry the watermelon. The sky is turning auburn in the sunset. The cool breeze feels so good on my sandaled feet. The plastic bag I'm carrying contains the watermelon and also some small bags of rock candy. If her mother finds them, she'll take them away, so we decided to eat them before we got her home. We opened the bags and enjoyed the rock candy. Rika isn't an exception. Whenever kids from our neighborhood come to our house for errands, Granny gives them some treats. Actually, that's a pretty common rule here in Hinamizawa. It's funny, but sometimes when parents aren't watching, siblings will fight over who gets to take the circular notice to the next house over. So these bags of rock candy are like tips for them. Of course, she doesn't normally give out this much. Usually it's just a little piece of it. Granny's being extra nice to Rika.
I feel bad getting all this candy.
Don't worry, Granny loves you. You should just thank her and put a big smile on your face, that's all.
Do you get lots of treats?
I used to, but at this age, they don't give me any. If they did though, I'd probably feel like I'd been treated as a little kid.
Me, I'm being treated like a child then.
That's okay, enjoy while you can. When you become as old as me, you won't get any, even if you wanted some. As we talked about ordinary things, I noticed Rika seemed a little sad. What's wrong?
Whenever I run errands, I get candy as a treat, but Sadako doesn't get any even if she comes with me.
I can think of so many reasons why. Not only Sadako, but everyone, the Hojo family, is being treated poorly in Hinamizawa. The Sonozaki family are the ones who instigated that. The 2 dam supporters have died in the accident already, but the malice against the Hojo family is still going. It's directed against Sadako and Satoshi, their children, and the aunt and uncle who are taking care of them. The big fight between the Hojo family and the Sonozaki family at the explanatory meeting started all this. But that was the Hojo couple, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the children, their aunt and uncle. But the idea the Hojo family are traitors evolved on its own. Therefore, anyone bearing the Hojo name is being treated poorly. The aunt and uncle weren't dam supporters, so over time the attacks toward them should have stopped, but they're rather odd, and they keep having trouble with their neighbors. They don't follow the community rules, they don't do their community duties, and they spray pesticide while their neighbor's laundry is still hanging outside. They often get into fights with other villagers, and they're hated even without the dam. Therefore, the Hojo family continues to be treated poorly. But none of that should have anything to do with Sadako and Satoshi. Sadako and Satoshi are often depressed at school, and I try to lead the conflict between the 2 families aside, but I wonder how they really feel about that. From their point of view, I'm just another member of the family that keeps harassing them. I don't want any of that at school. That's why I try to be their friend while we're there.
How can we get that to extend outside too instead of staying in the school?
That'd be pretty difficult. The Hojo family made enemies of the three families. They were branded as traitors, and that's still considered the truth. It wouldn't mean anything if one person suggested an end to the hostilities just because the events around the dam are history now. On the contrary, that would just put them in the same position. Unfortunately for Sadako and Satoshi, the only thing they can do is wait patiently until the issue withers away. All I can do for them is provide an oasis until that day comes.
So how long do they have to wait?
I don't know. The dam conflicts lasted for several years. They were branded back then, so it might take years to clear that up too.
Do you mean they won't be forgiven until they become adults? Will Sadako have to live out her childhood going through that?
That's pretty miserable, isn't it?
We are their friends, aren't we?
Sure, they're my friends. We're all buddies.
Then isn't there something that we can do to help our friends?
What exactly can we do? Even if the Sonozaki family declares the dam conflict's over, so the Hojo family are no longer outcasts, that won't solve the problem. It's not that simple. In the first place, Granny hates the Hojo family and won't suffer their name to be mentioned in the present. It's not a matter of someone forgiving another. It's a matter of very complicated ties between people in this village. It's absolutely terrifying to have them as your enemies. Everyone knows that very well. That's why they maintain good relations with their neighbors. However, if you make enemies out of them, you'll have to face the consequences. That's the unwritten law of the Japanese community. And the Sonozaki family is part of this unwritten law. And now the Hojo family are outcasts, not even the Sonozaki family can overturn the situation.
So even if it's an issue of Hinamizawa, we can't do anything about it as Hinamizawa residents?
Unfortunately, that's probably so, yeah. Even if there is someone who can help Sadako, that person must be someone who has nothing to do with the village. But there's no one like that here.
Are you saying someone from the outside has to come and help her?
Like Rika says, would a knight in shining armor from the outside world ever come here? Would that person bring in a new wind into the village that has been filled with stale air for hundreds of years? No way. That's just wishful thinking. Time will solve the problem someday. Until then, I have to be their ally. I can't think of anything else I can do for them. As Rika and I crunch on our rock candy, we can only pray that people will forgive Sadako and her family sooner rather than later. Rika gently broke the heavy silence.
I know. I know someone who has absolutely nothing to do with the village will come here from the outside.
That's right. The dam conflict's over, so it'd be great if more people moved into those lots that are for sale. Wouldn't it be fun when a family with a kid our age moved in?
He will come. I know. And we'll break this evil practice alongside him. That'll be the first key to one of the 3 locks that have us trapped in the past.
What's this? Are you talking about a novel or something? Rika always says odd things sometimes. When she talks that way, she seems so mature. I even start to doubt that she's really younger than I am. The unreasonable antagonism toward the Hojo family. Will there really be someone from the outside who will shatter our old traditions? Okay. We'll read one more. The first sacrifice. Alright, let's read that. I was half asleep, so I didn't even hear the phone ringing nearby. After a while, I finally realized the phone was ringing, and a ringing phone means that there's some kind of emergency. It's 2 in the morning. Who could even call me at this time of night? Hello, this is Irie? I'm sorry to bother you, Dr. Irie. It's Takano. She's never called me for a personal reason. At the institute, she's ranked just below me, so she's basically responsible for running it. So for her to call me this late, it must be an emergency. Sorry it took me so long. Is it true that we have another terminal patient? Yes. I was hoping to find a living specimen, so this is perfect. I initially thought that she abducted someone. The man had already been moved to the research area in the clinic's basement. Having been tied down to the examination table, he's struggling against his restraints, but more as though he's deranged than actually resisting. I can't even understand what he's saying. He sounds angry, sorrowful, like a child throwing a tantrum all at once. It's obvious he's not in the right state of mind. Anyway, let's put him under anesthesia. He might kill himself otherwise. I wanted to observe him a little longer, but I guess I have no other choice. The staff with a white gown got the anesthesia ready. Even a normal person would struggle to escape a restraining table in this suspicious room. But this man's behavior is at an abnormal level. I'm sure Okinogi and his friends from the Mountain Dogs are the ones who captured him. Capturing a man in this state of mind couldn't have been an easy task. Excuse me. According to Takano, she ran into this patient on her way home from the clinic by accident. She brought him back here and tested him. The result came back positive. Of course, I have no intention of just believing what she's telling me. There's no question that this man is at a terminal state, and a live specimen is exactly what we need to research the syndrome. Who is this man anyway? He had something wrapped in newspaper. What do you think was in it? What is this? There's something wrapped in a bloody newspaper on the tray nearby. Looking at the blood-drenched paper, I can only imagine there's something gruesome inside of it. Yet Takano looked like she wanted to surprise me with something interesting. Oh god, this is awful. It's a bloody right arm. The man on the table still has his. This right arm doesn't belong to him, so who does it belong to? I'm used to looking at things like this as a doctor, but the horrible cross-section makes me want to look away. It wasn't done according to a medically acceptable method, that's for sure. It was obviously done out of cruelty. Judging by the situation, we can assume this man cut off his arm. So, he's the culprit behind the body dumping that's been occurring in the neighborhood? At that point, there was no way of knowing who the right arm belonged to. But the next morning, the dismemberment murder of the dam construction site director was reported. They mentioned his right arm was still missing, so we learned who the right arm belonged to. This man has a criminal record, and he's on probation. He committed another crime. I bet he dismantled the body in order to hide it. I'm sure it depends on the circumstances, but he'll get more than just a few years in prison. So you won't hesitate to dissect a scumbag like him, right? Who knows? Maybe he was a scumbag before and became violent due to the syndrome. Or maybe he'd gone straight but became violent again due to the syndrome. The former is one thing, but if it's the latter case, it's not his fault. That's why Hinamizawa syndrome is so terrifying. We can't tell if the syndrome is the cause of the crime or if it's simply a problem of human nature. But what causes a defect of human nature in the first place is precisely area of research. Hating the crime, not the criminal. Can criminals only be corrected by punishing them with imprisonment? If a person commits a crime because of a mental disorder, but then gets a treatment, he is corrected. In other words, there are no crimes in this world, only patients awaiting treatment without anyone else being able to understand them. In medieval times, patients with mental disorders were said to be possessed by demons, and they were either confined or killed. Centuries after it, they were finally acknowledged as mentally ill people who needed treatment. Perception can change with time. Even if they are called criminals now, maybe after several centuries, those criminals will be acknowledged as patients who were entitled to appropriate treatment. Explain crimes through illness instead of malice. That's my life's work. Hinamizawa syndrome is a strange disease that can support my theory. Solving its mysteries is extremely important to me. To solve these mysteries, I need a medical sacrifice. It's an extremely sinful thing to do, but there's no way to unravel this without it. The Erie Institute was authorized to take such drastic measures if necessary. That's why I was asked about it so many times when I accepted the position of director. And finally, the opportunity is here. This will be our first step of our research in this strange disease, but even now, I am a little hesitant. I opened up human bodies in many surgeries. What I'll be doing on this man is very similar, but there's also something that's very different. What I did before was part of treatment. I did it to save patients' lives. I did it so the patients could have a better future. But what I'm trying to do here isn't treatment. He will die at the end of it. His death will be far from humane. I'm going to violate nature and force him to stay alive while I open up his living brain. Director Irie, are you listening? Sorry. Could you repeat that? I believe it's best that we submit the dissection proposal to Tokyo and request their assistance. He's not only alive, he's also in the terminal stage, so he's an extremely important specimen. We must conduct the dissection very carefully. That's true. You're right. Let's do as you say. I think we'll have a few days before the dissection, so I want to run some reaction tests once he's off the anesthetic. Do you think that's safe? Even if he's restrained, we don't know what will happen. We only have the opportunity to test a live specimen. We can't only look into his brain. Takano's unusual cheerfulness made me feel odd. Maybe her reaction is normal. Maybe I'm the one who's not reacting normally in this situation. I'm only here for the research, so I should be excited to have the opportunity to perform our first live dissection, but I'm still hesitant. How can I call myself a researcher? Researchers of the past were brave enough to cross the line. That's how they accomplish many things. I've seen many brains. I've operated on them. I've lost some patients too. I never thought anything of it because I knew I did the right thing, even when my hard work was denied afterward. If it pained me to think of that, I just needed to advance the field of medicine to ensure their deaths weren't wasted. That's the true form of those advancing the field of medicine. Yet, why was my heart tormented so much just by changing the name from treatment to dissection? Does it mean I'm not man enough to emulate those great men of the past who opened the doors to new medicine, that I don't have the power to develop new advances myself? Hey, what's the matter, Director? Are you feeling okay? Takano is pretending to be concerned about me, but she knows. She knows I'm still hesitating. She's telling me I should be ashamed as a researcher for feeling that way. I shook my head to clear it off the sleepiness. Remember, the resolve brought me here to this day. I already have blood on my hands, but if I stop now, their lives will be wasted. Those who shed their blood can only rest in peace once they've become the cornerstones of great research. I shook my head once more and reminded myself that I'm a researcher. No, I was just thinking. Takano, please make some arrangement with Tokyo and let them know when it's done. Okay, understood. This is really exciting. The least I can do is my best so his life won't be wasted. If he bleeds, I can't waste even a drop of his blood. After scolding my staff for their indiscretion, I discussed this dissection with such excitement. I returned to my office. Ugh. Poor Irie. In that sense. Oof. Alright. And then we can read about the second sacrifice. Alright. Talk tomorrow. It's always weird when you have to... That's where we're ending off with Takano. Goodness gracious. Good night!